Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. In the series of lecture on the aviation subjects, today I'm going to be covering the extended diversion time operations, or in short EDTO. EDTO is a big chapter, so therefore I have already divided this topic under 4 classes. In the first class, I will be covering the basic concept of the EDTO. Thereafter, I will cover the flight planning aspects. In the subsequent classes, I will be covering about the considerations for taking an en route alternate and the procedure to be followed an EDTO flight. The aim of this class is to understand the concepts and the procedures of EDTO or the ETOPS flight. In the conventional operations, if one aircraft has to fly from one place to another place, there should be a suitable alternate all the time within 60 minutes of flight time considered under one engine inoperative, which we generally call as a fixed speed, considered under the EASA conditions and in nil wind or the still air condition. This requirement of having a suitable alternate within 60 minutes of the flight time is generally applicable for the twin engine aeroplane. For 3 or more engine aircraft, then there should be a suitable alternate aerodrome within 120 minutes of flying time considered under nil wind conditions with one engine failure and under EASA conditions. The alternate aerodrome is an aerodrome to which an aircraft may proceed when it becomes either impossible or inadvisable to proceed or to land at an aerodrome of intended landing because of any reason, where the necessary service and facilities are available, where the aircraft performance requirement can be met and which is operational at the time of expected use. The alternate aerodromes can be of different types. The first one being a takeoff alternate. The takeoff alternate is that aerodrome in which an aircraft would be able to land should this become necessary shortly after takeoff and it is not possible to use the aerodrome of departure. The next could be the en route alternate, an alternate aerodrome at which an aircraft would be able to land that a diversion becomes necessary while en route. The third type of alternate is the destination alternate, an alternate aerodrome at which an aircraft would be able to land should it become either impossible or inadvisable to land at the aerodrome of intended landing. However, for EDTO flights, the takeoff and the destination aerodrome may be considered as an en route alternate. 60 minutes of the time, what we have discussed, that an aeroplane should be able to divert within 60 minutes of flight time considered under nil wind condition, under one engine failure and under EASA condition. This 60 minutes is what we call it as a threshold time for a twin engine aircraft. However, this 60 minutes of flight time, which we call it as a threshold time, may be changed by the specific regulators. Some of the examples are given. Okay, that is, if for a scheduled operators with 2 engine aeroplanes, irrespective of the all-of weight of the aircraft, the threshold time is 60 minutes. For non-scheduled operators with a maximum sitting capacity of 20 or more, then the threshold time is once again 60 minutes. However, for the NSOP, that is a non-scheduled operators, wherein the total number of passengers on board is 19 or lesser, than the threshold time is 90 minutes. This threshold time becomes 120 minutes for those aircraft who has got more than 2 engines. As I stated earlier, this threshold time of 60 minutes, 90 minutes or 120 minutes may be different for different regulators. However, the figure which is given here, the 60, 90 and 120 minute, is generally the time which is practiced in by most of the regulars. Then, any operation wherein I do not have any suitable aerodrome within this threshold time of 60 minutes, 90 minutes or 120 minutes is what we call it as a extended diversion time operation. That is any operation by an airplane with 2 or more turbine engines where the diversion time to an en route alternate aerodrome is greater than the threshold time established by that particular state operators. Then this kind of operation is known as the extended diversion time operations. This requires an authorization or a certification from that controlling authorities. That is, EDTO authorizations are specific approvals typically granted individually by aeroplane engine combination and the area of operation. However, authorizations may be combined for a model variations within the same aeroplane family and for a multiple geographical areas. So then the maximum time up to which you can seek the certification or the permission to fly with one engine under EASA and nil wind condition is known as the maximum time of diversion. It is the longest diversion time authorized for a flight and is calculated under the standard conditions in still air with one engine inoperative and under EASA conditions. This maximum diversion time is primarily used to establish the area of operations. The actual time of diversion from the time the failure happens or from the time the crew decide to divert for any reason, may be actually more than the certified time, that is the maximum diversion time. This maximum diversion time of operation depends upon the systems which are fitted in the aircraft. As we all know that it is going to take more time to divert towards a destination, then I will need to consider the system which can operate for the particular amount of time. Out of all the different systems which can operate for a particular time, the list out of that will be considered. Generally, that system which gives the minimum time of operation in most of the aircraft is the cargo fire suppression system. As far as the certification is concerned, the EDTO certification is reflected by the issuance of a EDTO CMP document. So, what is CMP? CMP is a configuration maintenance procedure, wherein the regulators will give you a document which we call it as CMP. The CMP documents is required for the dispatch standards. For EDTO operations, the aircraft should be configured. When I say configured, these aircraft should have a particular engine and the airframe combination, and apart from that, some equipments, if required for the EDTO operations, should be there or should be configured for, and maintained in a particular fashion which is required for the EDTO operations and operated according to the EDTO CMP documents. The configuration maintenance and the procedure requirements are that the particular aeroplane config minimum requirements including any special inspection, hardware life limits, MMEL constraints and the maintenance practices found necessary to establish the suitability of the aeroplane engine combination for the extended diversion time. As we discussed earlier, the maximum time up to which this aeroplane can seek for certification will depend upon many systems. So some of the systems which may be significant for the consideration of diversion time are the aircraft electrical system, including the batteries, the hydraulics, pneumatic systems, flight instruments, fuel systems, flight controls, ice protection systems, engine start and ignition, engine system instruments, navigation and communications, engine itself, the APU, air conditioning and depressurization, cargo fire suppression system, which I told you earlier that it is generally the most limiting one, the engine fire protection system, emergency equipment and any other equipment which is required for the EDTO operations. So out of those systems, as we discussed that generally the cargo fire suppression system is the one which is most limiting. Let us assume that the cargo fire suppression system can last in some of the aircraft for 205 minutes, 180 minutes, 150 minutes, and 135 minutes. Out of these, we will consider that that particular aircraft is capable that its cargo fire suppression system will operate for 135 minutes. Then in that case, a mandatory margin of 15 minutes needs to be subtracted from the maximum time of operation. That in this case is 135 minutes minus 15 minutes of margin, which will give you 120 minutes. That particular aircraft with that particular cargo fire system, there is 135 minutes of cargo fire suppression system, okay, we can ask certification only up to 120 minutes. That is after giving a margin of 15 minutes. And this 120 minutes, what we call it is a maximum diversion time, and it is generally expressed in terms of distance which you can fly on a particular speed. As far as those aircraft which has got more than 2 engines, then the EDTO certification is not normally required. However, some of the regulators may insist for the certifications. This means to say that the configuration and maintenance standards defined through the basic certification of an aeroplane with more than 2 engines are considered adequate as the EDTO operations. The time limiting system, if any, in those aircraft on aeroplanes with more than 2 engines should be performed by the aircraft manufacturer, and this will again decide the maximum time up to which an aircraft with more than 2 engines can ask for the certification. With this, I will finish the first part of my EDTO class on the introduction to the EDTO. In my next class, I will be talking about the planning consideration, wherein we will talk about the maximum diversion distance, EDTO entry point, EDTO exit point, equitime point, critical point, and the critical fuel planning. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.